The border between true crab territory and the mimic expanse was not a wall but a blur, a slow fade from polished coral into ruins where color refused to die. For years, the propaganda networks had painted it as a zone of disease, shells dissolving, eyes melting, minds consumed by parasitic art. But as Krill and Karelia approached, the first thing they noticed was music. It came not from instruments but from the reef itself, polyps and tunicates humming in harmonic waves, currents tuned like strings. Every motion seemed deliberate, every ripple part of a grand improvisation. The water here smelled of minerals and living code. Barnaby swam ahead, claws drawn, his instincts alert. Scuttle followed, muttering the old prayer for explorers, let the unknown stay curious. Chitin drifted behind them like an ancient satellite, sensors recording everything. Krill, unarmored, felt each vibration pass through him as if the sea itself were reading his thoughts. "Are you sure they'll receive us?" Barnaby asked. Krill nodded. "They already have." At first, the mimics appeared as shadows in the silt, amorphous figures reshaping themselves with every motion. Then the water cleared, and forms emerged, bodies of glassy membrane, patterns rippling across them like reflected thought. They were not one species but a spectrum of possibility. Some were the echo of crab forms, others seemed to borrow from lobsters, shrimp, and even barnacles. The leader approached, a tall being whose carapace shimmered between translucence and mirror. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, resonating through bone and water. "I am Strike," it said. "Once your kind's ally, now its ghost." Scuttle bowed slightly. "Then this meeting is resurrection." Strike studied them, especially Krill. "You bear no armor," it observed. "That is either wisdom or madness." "Both," Krill said. "Your science saved our reef once. We come to return what was stolen." Chitin extended a vial of mimic compound. "We intend to release it through the resin vents. But we need your network to amplify distribution." Strike's membrane rippled with unreadable light. "You plan to infect your world with empathy. Brave. Naive." They were led through the commune, a vast labyrinth of living architecture. Structures grew from coral interlaced with synthetic polymers, temples that breathed, factories that sang. Every wall pulsed with color corresponding to sound frequencies. Information and emotion were one system. Young mimics drifted through the corridors, reshaping themselves as they learned. Karelia could not help whispering, they turned art into environment. Strike overheard. "No," it replied. "We realized environment is art. Life imitates the conditions that allow it." Barnaby scowled. "Then why did you send spies across our borders?" Strike regarded him calmly. "To remind you that imitation is communication. We mirrored your violence until you could see it." Scuttle raised a claw. "You talk of reflection. But can reflection forgive? Our people are dying under resin." Strike's colors dimmed. "Forgiveness is another word for entropy. It disperses energy. We prefer transformation." They arrived at a central dome where a massive construct hovered in suspension, an array of bioluminescent polyps connected by filaments of light. "The sympathetic core," Strike said. "It links every mimic in the commune. Each pulse is shared sensation. Pain here is felt everywhere, joy, too. That is why we cannot lie." Chitin approached reverently. "A distributed nervous system, collective cognition without hierarchy." Strike inclined its head. "Exactly what your king fears most." Karelia reached out. The core responded with a bloom of color, mapping her thoughts in ripples of crimson and turquoise. Images filled her mind, the murals she'd painted, the crowds watching them fade, the children who memorized their patterns. Then, superimposed over it all, she saw the old ocean, infinite and recursive, its currents forming equations that resembled the core's structure. The same pattern, she whispered. Strike's voice softened. Because there is only one. We learned it by listening, not by conquering. Barnaby paced restlessly. Fine philosophy, but will it help us overthrow a tyrant? Strike's membrane darkened to the color of stormwater. Overthrowing is easy. Replacing is harder. You want to free yourselves from resin, yet resin is only solidified fear. Remove it, and you must teach your kind not to crave new armor. Krill looked toward the core. Then teach us. Strike's eyes glowed like tiny suns. Teaching requires sharing, and sharing requires risk. When two minds touch without boundary, both dissolve a little. Are you prepared to lose your edges? Krill hesitated, then nodded. Strike extended a filament of light and pressed it to Krill's chest. The current entered him like fire and cold at once. His mind filled with alien memories, centuries of exile, experiments, births that were mergers, deaths that were gifts. He felt the commune's collective consciousness envelop him, not consuming, but integrating. He saw how mimic biology had evolved beyond competition. Identity was fluid, individuality a temporary pattern in a larger field. To them, imitation was worship, a way to honor creation by reproducing it in new forms. When the connection ended, Krill floated silently, trembling. Chitin recorded the neurochemical readings. Scuttle whispered a prayer he did not believe in. Strike withdrew the filament. Now you understand. Release your antidote, and we will amplify it through our networks. But remember, the cure will also change you. Once fear dissolves, so does the hierarchy that depended on it. Barnaby looked away. Maybe that's the point. Strike's tone was almost gentle. Then go, soft-shelled messiahs. Spread your contagion of compassion. And when your reef begins to molt, do not flinch at the sight of its rawness. As they departed, Corelia turned once more toward the glowing commune. What will become of you? She asked. Strike smiled, or imitated the concept of smiling. We will become what we've always been, your reflection, waiting for you to recognize yourself. The water carried their words away like seeds. Behind them, the sympathetic core pulsed brighter, sending new harmonics through the sea, a signal traveling toward New Carcinia faster than any patrol could intercept. Krill felt it thrumming in his blood, the first heartbeat of a different civilization.